Hello, and welcome to episode 35 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. We're here today with Delegate Keith Haynes from District 44A in West Baltimore. How are you doing, Delegate Haynes?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Jordan?
Excellent. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what are you currently doing, or what have you ever done to advance the public interest, and why?
Well, that's a very broad question. I think basically it's a multifaceted question depending upon what viewpoints you're looking at. As a practicing attorney, one of the things I do is represent clients in the legal system. I am their voice in the legal system. And so to that end, I'm trying to advance or resolve the issues which they have. And so that's a way of helping people. I carry that same mantra in the public sector as a legislator because I'm the representative's voice, collective voice of my district, which I represent, District 44A in Annapolis. And so there are many things which I have worked on to advance my constituent needs and issues. Number one, we basically, with the Hunger-Free Schools Act recently, I think that was last session, we were able to pass legislation which would pretty much guarantee every child in the state of Maryland free lunch. Not just reduced, but free. And that's significant in many of our areas where individuals who are struggling to have a basic meal, which is important to the success, academic success of a student. I recently introduced legislation which led to the 21st Century School for Baltimore City, where we brought back $1.1 billion to build new schools in the city of Baltimore. Many of our schools are beyond age 50. They're outdated. It costs too much to try to revamp them. And we need to have 21st century state-of-the-art facilities in order to provide a 21st century state-of-the-art level of education to our students. And so those are some of the things we're doing on the education front with students. When you look at individuals as far as resources that we're trying to bring back into District 44A, there are a myriad of issues where we need just physical resources, financial resources. And I'm very pleased to announce that we were able to bring back about $600,000 to renovate one of the major parks in District 44A to provide, which is a hub of providing activities to our youth and our young people. It's going to be transformative because it is one of the few operating recreation centers with a huge multi-field rec field, meaning it has several softball fields and a football field, and we're trying to revamp that and also to provide soccer opportunities as well. And so whether it's community, with resources, whether it's with education with our students, I try to bring back those resources from Annapolis to effectuate in a positive way the change in my district and my communities.
So what is it that makes your district unique? Demographically, socioeconomic characteristics of your constituency? Because I hear you talking about parks. I hear you talking about assistance with providing meals for the students. Are these means tested meals? Are their families income tested, or really can every Marylander get free lunch regardless of how much money their parents make?
The legislation will allow every student in the state of Maryland to have free meals.
Kindergarten through 12th grade?
First grade through 12th grade.
First grade through 12th grade.
Now, I have a very diverse district. I mean, I represent urban Baltimore, southwest Baltimore, and a little bit of central Baltimore. And I can go from literally one end of the spectrum to the other. One part of my district, I have a myriad of vacant homes, lower income. On the other scale, I have $1 million plus homes in one of the more affluent communities in the city, and everything in between. And so there are a diversity of issues and challenges when you look at where we are in the city. But one of the things I just want to point out as far as District 44A is concerned, one of the things that we struggle with, not only in the state of Maryland, but in Baltimore as well, how do we get people employed? How do we reduce barriers to get people from point A to point B? Many of the times that those barriers exist with arrest records, nonviolent, minor offenses, and i.e. mass incarceration. And on one hand, you're balancing law and order, but on the other hand, you're trying to create opportunities to put people back to work. And one of the major pieces of legislation which affected my district, and not only my district, but Baltimore City, where we had the mass incarceration going on. I introduced the legislation that provided for, and we passed it, of course, the automatic expungement of arrest records when individuals were arrested but not charged. And immediately when that bill was signed into law, about 600,000 individuals' records were, for minor offenses and nonviolent offenses, were eliminated, were expunged. And that created an opportunity for people to not only get jobs, but to go to school, to qualify for financial assistance, to get mortgages, to buy homes, things of that nature. And so, but what I found that even though the driver for that legislation grew out of what I was experiencing in my district and in the city of Baltimore, the parallel situations existed in other jurisdictions that you did not hear about on the western shore, on the western part of the state, in the eastern part of the state, and even in some of our more affluent jurisdictions, such as Montgomery County and Prince George's County as well. And it pops up, believe it or not, when an individual who may be on Friday night college, may be arrested, detained. When they get ready to apply for that professional license, it pops up.
Interesting.
And it's a barrier.
So if you get arrested, even if if no charges are brought against you,
you have an arrest record.
You still have an arrest record, and that is detrimental to, or that traditionally has been revealed through a job application process.
Absolutely.
And so people potentially having been arrested due to no fault of their own,
absolutely,
without ever being charged of committing a wrongdoing, are being inhibited, or were prior to your law, in their search for employment,
licensure, whether you're applying for a license in any profession, applying for a mortgage, any of those things. And many times people don't know that they think that because they were not charged, they do not have a record. So they may answer the question incorrectly, unbeknownst to their own knowledge.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so even though we were experiencing those things on what we call a mass incarceration, because the numbers were so high in Baltimore City, but like as I said before, when we introduced the legislation, there were a myriad of areas across the state where this was happening as well. So it affected literally scores of people in every jurisdiction across the state.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about mass incarceration. Now, for our listeners, District 44A is predominantly, or West Baltimore is predominantly African American, and many individuals experience poverty, have incomes below the federal poverty line. In fact, District 44A was the location of the Freddie Gray riots. Could you talk a little bit about the role that race plays in politics and in justice? What is going on there? What is this mass incarceration? What are your constituents feeling? Are they feeling like the laws are not fair? What's going on?
Well, first of all, let me just simply say that we don't use the term riot. We use civil unrest because it really is a misnomer as to what really occurred. But the demographics of Baltimore City is majority African American, or I should say a majority minority jurisdiction, and it can cut across various demographics, both as to race, gender, and socioeconomic opportunities. One of the things that we have experienced is a loss of jobs, a loss of opportunity. And people have to do whatever is necessary to survive. And so many times when individuals who live in, let me just sort of clarify something.
Yeah.
It's a misnomer that because you may be lower income that all things are bad. That's not true. We have tremendous people in our communities who work very hard every single day to make their communities, their block, their neighborhood better. But we do, as an urban area, are challenged with those who would not do those things that would improve their community. And so we have to deal with that. And a lot of times it's not necessarily by choice, but it's by force. Because people are forced to do whatever they need to do in order to survive. And when you don't have the job opportunities there, the education opportunities, and when there are issues with police and community relations, there seems to be a lot of times that there is no chance of escaping that, or there's no hope. And so the biggest driver in changing things around, and in light of the civil unrest behind the Freddie Gray incident, is number one, many things that came to the surface, I should say, as a result of the Department of Justice report and investigation, was things that people in the neighborhood already knew. So there wasn't really a surprise.
Yeah.
People have been saying this for many years.
What were some of those revelations?
Well, that the police and community relations are strained. That there were incidents where people may be unconstitutionally stopped, frisked. And you have to do that according to the law. I mean, according to the Supreme Court decision of Terry, I think Terry v. Owens is the Terry case, which you have to have a reasonable, articulable suspicion. You just can't stop someone.
Is there such a thing? Does institutional or structural racism exist?
I think that you will find that answer probably in every pocket of the country.
So how does that affect the criminal justice system, or just the judicial system? How does it affect society? Do people feel as though the blocks are stacked against them, and even if they follow the law and do the best they can, they're still not going to succeed?
I think that.
Is there despair?
Let me say it this way. The answer in short form is, in many cases, yes. And we are working legislatively to address that. The Justice Reinvestment Act, which we passed this past legislative session, seeks to provide the resources for diversion, to keep people out of the system by providing opportunities before they actually engage the system, as opposed to just locking people up. It doesn't work. We're not talking about the most violent crimes or incidences, but 75% of the people who are incarcerated are literally reincarcerated because they're there because of a technical violation of parole and probation. And what's a technical violation? Well, if you're 1 minute late from meeting the time you're supposed to meet your parole officer, that's a technical violation. And if an officer chooses to do so, they can initiate the process to reincarcerate you for that. So those are the types of things that don't really move the ball forward for people, because it doesn't create opportunity. And so the legislation that we passed looked at front-loading opportunities with resources.
Yeah.
A lot of people, in some cases, are incarcerated because they lack the proper and necessary drug treatment, or substance abuse treatment, or mental health treatment. And, when individuals, such as the police, get a call for an individual who may be acting in a strange manner, that individual may be suffering from a mental disorder, but they're incarcerated. They're not taken to a hospital. So we have looked at how we can change that and provide those services on the front end, as opposed to incarceration. So there are a myriad of things which have come out of the civil unrest with Freddie Gray, but many of those issues were in existence and were just percolating to be resolved, and that's what we're working to try to do.
So you've mentioned the importance of government to create jobs. What is the role of state or local government in creating jobs?
Well, first of all, I think that you have to recognize what government can and cannot do. Obviously, there are some areas where we can create jobs by creating capital opportunities. But you have to support the business community as well in creating those job opportunities. For example, recently, one of the most contentious issues in Baltimore City in a long time on the local level was providing a multi-million-dollar TIF to a development project in Baltimore City.
What's a TIF?
It's a financing tool called tax increment financing, which provides for a development to occur with the payment of taxes spread out over many years. But the bottom line is this: that is a state resource, that is a public resource, and one of the things that the public demanded, because it was such an extraordinary amount, was that if this development is going to take place and the developers are going to benefit, the community should benefit in jobs.
Right.
And so there were a series of meetings held to discuss how the city of Baltimore and the communities and the unemployed could become employed and be involved in taking advantage of the opportunities that will flow from that particular development. And so there was a commitment to hire Baltimoreans, a commitment to get individuals who are unemployed to get them employment ready. So you provide the training, the incubator for that to happen, and so that there's a pool of eligible applicants from which those jobs that will be created, which the companies could pull from. So that's how one way how the government can be supportive of job creation. And another one is literally supporting businesses with employment opportunities, and sometimes it takes place in the form of tax credits and et cetera.
So it sounds like that the first example, the state provides a tax credit as an incentive for developers to develop underutilized and undervalued land. And in exchange for that benefit, there's an agreement struck between the state and the developer that they will hire local, and then the state will engage in workforce development programs to get the population ready to be employed by those developers. And then you'll also look around and say, how can we provide benefits to local businesses, tax credits to help keeping them afloat and employing Baltimoreans? Is that basically what you said?
There might be some nuances in the explanation that you gave that might not be reflective totally of the concept, but the concept is on point.
Okay.
Pretty much.
So it sounds like a big driver of some social unrest in your district is ubiquity of poverty.
Well, no, what it really comes down to is that people who are disenfranchised have to have opportunities to be re-enfranchised into the communities in which they live. And that occurs through better community relations between law enforcement and the community, better understanding of policing that comes through providing better educational opportunities in our city, whether it's programmatic or whether it's facilities, having a decent place to go to school. And also to, at the end of the day, a person can see the benefit of going to school or completing their education with a job opportunity. And the biggest driver, when I'm asked this question many times, is what are the issues, the number one issue facing your area? And it is the lack of jobs. And that's why we work very hard to try to bring job opportunities to our area. Let me just give you a perfect example. Recently, about 4 weeks ago, I held a job fair, an expungement, informational, and voter registration collectively at one of the hardest hit areas in my district, where the employment is very high. We brought employers on site to not just interview individuals or provide information, but who were ready to offer jobs. At 10 o'clock, which the program event was supposed to begin, at 8:30, there was a line from the front door to the street wrapped around the building at 8:30 with people in line ready to apply for jobs, ready to find out how they can get their record expunged so they can apply for a job and register to vote so they can be refranchised, re-engaged in participating through the voting process in the community. And there's data that says that, number one, on just registering to vote, individuals who are registered to vote, the recidivism rate goes down about 70%.
For our listeners, recidivism means returning to prison after being released from incarceration.
What we were doing caught on so quick through social media. I had one employer who called me about halfway through the event and said, "Delegate, I just found out about this on social media. Tell me how we can be involved, because I'm ready to hire 60 people right now today for a call center that we have in the city, and we're gearing up and we need to hire people. We don't care whether they have a record. We don't care about that. What we care about is that good people who can learn the skills and who are committed to doing the job, and we're ready to hire now." And I told them that, look, if you can get here in 15 minutes, you got a space. And I had to give them a big shout out for this particular company, because I think about 50 people walked away that day with a job, with a decent wage.
Wow.
And
how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel that we're doing something right. And what was encouraging by that was that I saw on multiple occasions individuals who were there early and they came back later. And I engaged in conversation with them, to say, how is it going? Did you find everything you need? And I said, well, you were here maybe a couple hours ago. They said, yes, Delegate, what I'm here because I'm good. But I went back to get my buddy to bring him here. Okay. And so that's encouraging. And what that tells me is that, people want to do the right thing. They just need the right opportunity to do it.
So what would you say is the top idea in your voters' minds when they send you back to Annapolis? What are they really electing you to do? Right.
Well, I'm not a mind reader.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is this, is that every day I work to be a voice for the people I represent in my district. And I take the same mantra that I use as a trial attorney and representing a client in court. I cannot properly prepare my client's case unless I know their situation, unless I communicate with them, unless I know what the end result that they need. I can't plead their case unless I know that. So I have to engage with my client in order to be their voice in the courtroom to get the results that they need. So I take the same level of responsibility in representing my constituents in Annapolis. I meet with my district regularly, whether it's through community association meetings, whether it's at special events, whether it's the meetings that I hold, listening to problems, listening to issues, trying to find resolutions. And at the end of the day, you try to be responsive through legislation or through resources, through the budget, or just being able to bring people together with resources that exist to get the result that they're looking for. And if you do that, I always say that, number one is to take care of your constituents, and we try to do that every day.
Sounds like one of the major roles that you play is acting as an ombudsman in a way, somebody who connects the constituents with government services, with private businesses. People know to go to you for resources, and people who have other needs know to come to you, and what you do is kind of connect the dots for different people. Is that correct?
Well, that's one way you can look at it. I mean, we have a myriad of issues, so you have to be responsive in a myriad of ways.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that, as a public figure, I talk about Annapolis and public resources and legislation, bills introduced and passed, but also where there's opportunity to help my district, we try to do it. It's interesting that you mentioned private relationships. One of the biggest things that happened this past year was that I was able to help create a sight and vision center in one of the hardest hit areas of my district with the highest disparity of diabetes. Where individuals who have that chronic disease have vision and sight problems. And so, in my role as a lawyer, we had an opportunity where a husband and wife who were simple, everyday individuals, no glamorous job, but they just saved their money over time. And they wanted to leave their estate to help individuals who suffered from diabetes and had a resulting vision and sight loss.
Wow.
And so we were able to establish through Bon Secours Hospital, which administered the program, the Vision and Sight Center, and that gift to the tune of about $500,000 was something that we have not seen in Baltimore, as far as a private gift in the area which I represent. So, you have opportunities wherever you are, you're located on the spectrum, be it public or be it private, to help your constituents.
So we're nearing the end of the podcast, and we've covered so much ground, from police community relations to the war on drugs to poverty and educational needs, nutritional needs, healthcare needs, facilitating economic development opportunities. There's such a wide, vast array of needs in your community. And yet, and it demands so much of your time, I'm sure, to address all these needs. When you look back upon all your years of service, why are you doing it? How are you prioritizing? How do you get through the day? It just seems like a laundry list of items that will never, ever end. I mean, what keeps you going? What is it that makes you so dedicated to public service?
Well, I think you've sort of captured the day in the life of a legislator in District 44A. But it goes back to something I mentioned earlier, and that is the ability to help people, whether it's in my legal profession as a practicing trial attorney, or in the public sector as a representative in the Maryland House of Delegates. I get up in the morning, I try to roll that ball up the hill every day to resolve issues for people. And at the end of the day, which usually is very late, if I've resolved or helped at least one person, that gives me the incentive to keep doing what we're doing. And we can't wipe out every single problem, every single issue, but we have to keep working and find ways to make it happen.
So that's Delegate Keith Haynes, who draws inspiration from his stories, his stories of success, and yet he continues to find himself facing an enormous array of problems, but he still finds hope and success, as do his constituents, in just making a little difference in one person's life, whether it be the one individual who's been able to get a job at the job fair and comes back to get his friend, to the story of a couple who don't have much to give, but they're willing to give everything to help others in their community get ahead. Delegate Haynes is somebody who takes a moment to give of himself to make sure that others are able to get by and get through their situation, and that's adequate enough for Delegate Haynes. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been episode 35 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.